Welcome to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast with your hosts Jim Quinn of OSGA.com and JR O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports. Let's get started.
Hello, folks, and welcome to Cast Your Bets, Week 14 of the podcast, Week 14 of the NFL season. My name is Jim from OSGA.com, the Offshore Gaming Association, here with my good friend J.R. O'Donnell of Red Zone Sports and Pregame.com. Here every week on Cast Your Bets, we try to teach you a little bit about how to play some games, a little bit about how to manage your money and bet these games, and J.R. usually fires off a couple of winners. JR, how you feeling this week? Hopefully you got a couple more winners for us.
I'm feeling a lot better this week. Still a little bit under the weather. It gives me a lot of extra time to handicap. It is the most fantastic time of year now. Bowl season on tap, college football winding down, but the bowl season on tap, obviously. But the NFL, the good teams, the mediocre teams, and the poor teams are all starting to play out. Last week, if I chirped my own horn a little bit, and we will get to this, we picked the Minnesota Vikings. They put up 14, and they held Matty Ice and Sarkisian's offense to 9 points. There was a great winner on the Minnesota Vikings. UCF was a winner or push as they put up a lot of points against the Memphis team. And this week, that's right, this week, I am ready to go. I am stoked up. I'm excited, and I can't wait to get into it on the podcast.
That's fantastic, man. We're glad to hear you're doing a little bit better. There was over 100 points scored in that UCF game, man. It was out of control. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen watching it, let alone the fact that, it was going to be a push or a winner there, at the end. It was really, really terrific having a few dollars on that game. And, we'll try and teach the guys a little bit about how to do some betting this week as well. You also gave the members a nice winner with Idaho. How'd you do over on pregame? You have a nice weekend over there in general?
Absolutely. I cracked them on pregame. Like I said, I might have been under the weather. I might not have had a voice, but my facilities were about me. This time of year, my customers count on me. What I do is there's no rest for the weary. Like I said, I do this 24/7. I got papers all over the place. Everybody's sleeping. I'm up 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I did great. College football, we did great. And I went 4-1 in the NFL. Had a nice big fat winner. Played the NFL rock solid 80%, and I'm cracking them this year and looking forward to just rolling the rest of the season.
Nice, man. I did cash a nice ticket on the Vikings, and then I also took them on the money line in a parlay, which helped me out to end up with some of my own picks, which of course didn't win, including my poor Eagles. But that's a topic for another day. This week, I want to talk a little bit. We try to teach bettors a little bit each week on how to bet, some things you use in the handicapping world to try and help you pick games. And we're getting to that time of year where weather's going to have an impact on games. It's going to get cold out. There's going to be some snow. You have that driving rain and the 40-degree temperature and stuff. And, one of the things I want to talk about this week is, does the weather really affect the line that's set, or is it more the public perception of what the weather's going to do rather than what the lines maker actually does there, JR?
I think it's a combination of both. I did a lot of research on this. Those lines makers are the sharpest, most brilliant minds out there. Those guys, they never sleep. You think I work hard? They never, ever sleep. They know exactly where the public's going. And I think the weather, the windy conditions, the rain, the dome teams not playing outside, I think obviously the lines makers take that into account. But I think public perception also plays into that. When you see the lines makers set the line and then that line moves terrible off that week, that's obviously the public getting involved. But to answer your questions and be succinct here, I think the lines maker is obviously sharp with the weather, and I think the public does have a lot to do with moving the line after it's set.
Yeah, when I first started playing around with betting games, JR, 100 years ago when everybody wrote stuff down on paper with a pencil, it seemed that I had a lot more in my mind that was going to happen. If it was going to rain, it means there wasn't going to be any points scored. If it was going to snow, that means, forget about it. It's going to be a 16-3 game or something. And, it was a big mistake I made earlier. I've done a bit of research myself. You basically have 4 factors involved in the weather at this time of year. You have the cold, you have the wind, the rain, and then the possibility of snow. From what I'm able to tell, the only 2 real factors that matter are cold and wind in terms of really the totals, not necessarily the sides. What have you used in your handicapping over the years, JR, in terms of these 4 factors with the weather in the wintertime?
Oh, you make a bunch of great points. And if I can allude back to an overplay I had a couple weeks ago, I had over Kansas City, New York Giants. That baby was scheduled to go over 43, 43 and a half, even 44. The wind just came in there and just blew that total right out of the ballpark. I don't think those teams put up 20 combined. So the wind is a big factor. Now, regular force winds aren't going to be too much, but the gale force winds, the swirling winds affect the quarterback, affect the defense, affect the passing game. The wind is big time when it comes to totals, and you have to put a bullseye and be spot on when it comes to the wind and the totals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's above 17 miles an hour is the rule of thumb. The 15 to 17 miles an hour is where you start to see, the ball being thrown around and it being affected. Another factor that I found that plays into it is the cold. I think a lot of people, and myself again, when I first started out doing this, thought that, it's a freezing cold game. There's not going to be any points scored, when it's actually the contrary. In games where the temperature's under 40 degrees, the over's gone over at a rate of nearly 60%. And when it gets even colder than that, the winning percentage of over jumps up to like 70% when it's below freezing. And I think that's a big misconception. I'm guessing the lines maker probably builds in the misconception there. So I think there's probably some opportunity on games where you're really involved with some freezing cold temperatures, like we're probably going to see this weekend in a couple of spots.
Right. It is a misconception. The cold does not affect the totals as much as the wind. When you're handicapping the game, you're handicapping the weather. You got to remember these NFL players are all college all-stars. They all played outdoors in college. Obviously, these guys that are playing for a Jacksonville or a Miami or a Tampa or, even down in Georgia, Atlanta, but they all came from cold weather cities. They all played their high school and college football in cold weather, so they're used to it. Obviously, it's a conglomeration of all-stars, and I wouldn't be scared about the cold. I would actually look that the lines makers might drop it down, thinking the public is going to go under. That's when you want to go over. You want to take advantage of the miscue.
Yeah, and I think we also see a little bit more of the weather being a factor in college football, which, all the ball games are going to be played in warm weather. But when you start getting into some cold, some warmer weather schools like your Florida, your Texas schools going up and playing in the Northeast or up in Minnesota, that's when you see a little bit of a change. In the NFL, I don't see it being as big a factor. And you make a great point that, the players here, they're professionals, they're getting paid. Certainly, it might affect how they feel a little bit, but I don't necessarily think it affects so much how they actually play out between the stripes.
Absolutely. These guys are highly trained professionals. Unbelievable, if I can throw it in here. Gronk, he got fined $283,000 per game. Obviously, Gronk in a cold weather city. And I'm not picking on the guy, but he did a dumb mistake against Buffalo. But, it takes people years to make $281,000, and he does a bonehead play, and Gronk suspended $281,000. That's unfathomable for that guy.
Wow, man, that's incredible. That's such a huge pile of money into Gronk, and these guys are making $1 million a game. That's like you and me going out to a nice dinner with the wife, I guess. We're winding down the college football season at this point, JR. In fact, this weekend is the only weekend of the year where I believe there's only one college football game on the board, and then we head into the bowl games. We've got Army-Navy this week, the 117th meeting of this, back in Philadelphia where it's been played an awful lot of times. What you got any thoughts on this game in terms of Army-Navy?
Yeah, I went over this game big time. I tried to get something for the listeners, but, I think the listeners appreciate when you don't want to make a move in this game. I put my numbers in here. I have a bunch of systems, power rating, defense, offense, and I get this line right on the number. Army-Navy, to me, is obviously a classic. The president, everybody and their brother. I certainly support our military. It is a great game and a great venue. But there's no value as a handicapper with the Army-Navy game. I'm not going to come on here stomping up, steaming and shouting because I get passionate about these games, and I'm not going to send it in two-fisted on either side because it would certainly be a disservice to the listeners and the people in the podcast here. There is not any type of edge. Now, you might go to somebody that has their lock or their military lock. They're full of baloney. I do this thing for a living. I dissect this team, and I just can't find any value.
Well, it's a classic example of something we talked about on the podcast a week or two ago, that you don't have to bet a game just because it's on TV. You don't have to bet a college football game because it's the only one on. I'm a little surprised that actually the number on this, Navy being favored by 3 when the Black Knights are at 8-3. But it's one of those things I read in the paper the other day. Navy lost their last 2 games, and the coach flat out said, well, we don't really care too much because we've been practicing for 2 weeks to play against Army. And when you hear that kind of stuff, you start saying, whoa, I don't know if I want to throw any dollars on this at all. And I think it's a classic example of a good no play.
Absolutely. Sometimes the best play is a no play. Save your money for the NFL game we're going to give you. Save your money for some bowl picks down the road. Don't play the game because it's on TV. You can certainly watch it as it's an All-American icon. You can root for the boys. Believe me, I support the military. I love the fact that our military is strong, but there's no value as a handicapper. And like I said, to repeat myself, I would be doing a disservice to give you a play on this game.
Yeah, and the same thing applies when we come up with the 40 bowl games that are on the slate starting next weekend. Just because there's a bowl game on, there's no reason to have to bet that game. You don't have to find yourself betting on a South Mississippi State you know nothing about just because they're on TV. So I think this is a good example. And I don't think I'm going to play this game either. I normally don't play Army Navy. I think it's one of those games I just kind of like to enjoy watching. Spend some time with a few pieces of paper in front of me looking at the Sunday games while I'm watching the Army-Navy game. So for this week, no pick on the NCAA because there's just the one game from JR. But we'll be back strong with an NFL pick after a brief commercial from OSGA. Don't forget, you can find this podcast out on iTunes. You can find us on a very popular podcast site called Blueberry, and, of course, out on the OSGA.com website. In addition, we post this thing with some video attached to it, some stats about these teams out on YouTube. So we urge people to go ahead and follow us out there, subscribe to us out on Blueberry, and you'll get this podcast every week. Folks, we'll be right back after a short break from OSGA.
The offshore betting industry is totally unregulated.
Where can you turn to make sure your money is safe offshore?
The Offshore Gaming Association, OSGA. Visit the Offshore Gaming Association at www.osga.com or call them toll-free 7 days a week at 877-OSGA-BET. That's 877-674-2238. Established in 1998, the OSGA has been the ultimate watchdog for the unregulated offshore betting industry. They have helped thousands of players find secure, reputable offshore wagering outlets and perform dispute resolution for hundreds of wronged players. Visit the Offshore Gaming Association at www.osga.com or call them toll-free at 877-OSGA-BET.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to Cast Your Bets, our 14th podcast. Hopefully, if you listened to us during the course of the season, cashed a few winners and learned how to place your money a little better. So hopefully at the end of the season, by listening to myself, Jim from OSGA, and JR from pregame.com, JR O'Donnell, you will have ended up at the end of the season turning a profit and sticking some money in your pocket after the Super Bowl, which would be really terrific to hear from the listeners out there if that's what you end up doing. One of the things I want to talk about, and every week I try to talk a little bit about what's going on in the sportsbook world. One of the things that you'll see every time you go and you shop for a sportsbook and you look around is places that want to give you a big bonus. If you go back a number of years, back to the early 2000s, you'll see that sportsbooks used to always give players a cash bonus, which means you get money put into your betting account just as if you deposited cash in there for you to use however you would like to use it. One of the nice advantages of a cash bonus is it's right there in front of you. You can see that you have $200, and you can play on whatever you want. You can bet on parlays, you can bet on teasers, and that's a nice advantage of the cash bonus. What's happened in recent years is these bonuses have moved to the form of a free play. So you would used to get $100 in a cash bonus. Now you're getting $100 in a free play, and what you have to decide is what's best for you. There's certain advantages to both of them. Usually your free play bonuses have a higher bonus and a little bit lower rollover. But the problem with the free play is you have to bet it on either a side or a total, and it's what you win off the bet. So if you bet $55, you get $50 put into your account. The way that the sports books look at it, the cash bonus is almost a 1-to-2, or the free play is a 2-to-1 for them in their books. So it's even money. A 200% free play to them is the same thing as 100% cash bonus is to them. You as a player need to decide which is right for you. We recommend whenever you can to grab a cash bonus. There's a few places out there that offer a nice cash bonus. GT Bets one, for example, that always gives a cash bonus. There's some places out there that do some creative things too. BetMania, they'll give you a 200% free play with a 16-time rollover, or 100% cash with an 18-time rollover. So even though they say that it's a 2-to-1, you notice that there's a little more rollover attached to the cash, and that's because you can use the cash for whatever you want. And that's at BetMania. That's a sweet bonus package. WagerWeb has 3 different levels of bonus. What they'll do is they'll give you either 10 or 10% cash or 15% free play with a low rollover, or they'll give you 50% cash or 75% free play with a much larger rollover. And finally, you have BetPhoenix, which will give you a huge free play bonus with a huge rollover, and a 50% free play with only a 5-time rollover. So you have to really depend what you're looking for there in terms of these bonuses, and keep in mind that the different types of bonuses you're actually getting and the rollovers that are associated with them. One problem players get involved with is they deposit a big sum of money, they take a huge bonus with a gigantic rollover, and then they bet $50 a game, and it takes them till the end of the season before they can actually cash out any of that money. So players really need to be aware. There's some great bonuses out there. Certainly you can head to osga.com, click on Sportsbook Bonuses right there at the top of the homepage. We have some of the top offers going on right now. And take a look at what's right for you. Keep your eye on those rollovers, and at the end of the day, you'll end up being able to cash some money out, put some in your pocket, and that's really the goal here at Cash Your Bets, to help you be able to stick some of that money back into your pocket whenever you want to do that. One of the things that's going to be going on the next few weeks is a lot of football betting on NFL football, because there's not much college. JR, what do you have for us this week in the NFL after that fat straight-up winner on the Vikings last week?
Yeah, it's easy to come up here each and every week when I'm doing well in the NFL. And last week, the Minnesota Vikings showed that they don't turn the ball over, showed that Case Keenum is an NFL quarterback. And they held Matty Ice. Like I said, that was a key stat. Matty Ice, who everybody thought was back in action with the offensive coordinator, to 9 points, 3 field goals. Now, everybody saw the Seattle Seahawks take care of the Philadelphia Eagles at home. And let me tell you about Russell Wilson. He is Mr. December. Stats on him, 18-5 straight up in December. And the Seattle Seahawks are playing a Jacksonville Jaguars team. Jacksonville is laying 1.5 or 2. I think the line's even going to be 2.5 by game time. But let me tell you, I like Seattle in December. They are a veteran team. Now, they're banged up a little bit. But let me tell you about the NFC West. Doug Marrone and the Jags basically are not good against the NFC West. 6-16 ATS against the NFC West, and 0-11 ATS, and 0-2 straight up this season. The Jaguars have a nice club. They are a nice ball club. We played them early in the year. But let me tell you about Seattle. They are a step up in class. They're another level. And I love the Seahawks and Russell Wilson to go into Jacksonville and win outright. 2.5 is going to be a bonus. Mr. December and Russell Wilson, who doesn't make mistakes with a veteran team. Jacksonville has a 2-game lead in the wild card spot, and Seattle is 1 game. That's right, 1 game in front of Atlanta, and they're booking for that playoffs. They cannot miss. They cannot miss a game. I'm pumped up. I'm excited, and I'm playing the Seahawks as my NFL play.
That's a sweet play, man. I actually really like this. I looked at this and went, whoa, Seattle's a dog here? And then I realized, wait a minute, we're talking about the NFL where everything's week to week. Because, you look at what Seattle did last week against the Philadelphia Eagles, and you say to yourself, Jesus, they should be favored in this game. And I look at the number, and it's +3, and Jacksonville has really been playing strong. 5 of their last 6 they've won. They're 4-2 at home this year. They destroyed the Colts last week. They're the Colts, but they destroyed them like they should have. So I think this is a nice game. I think this is probably a good line. I'm surprised it didn't open more as a pick instead of at -3. But I mean, it's hard to say no to a Pete Carroll team that's 21-5 in December since he took over in 2011. And I really like your selection here this week on the Seattle Seahawks, JR.
If I can chirp in here, Seattle is a monster of a team in December. They laid down a little bit early, but nobody, that's right, no NFL coach wants to play the Seahawks in December. And I think Jacksonville's a scared team. They got some talent, but they are not the class of the league with the Seahawks. And on the road or at home, Seattle gets it done.
Yeah, I think it's also if the Jacksonville wins this week, they clinch a spot in the playoffs. That's always sketchy to me when I see a team that's on that kind of verge thing and they still have a couple of games left to play. They really only have to win 1 or 2 more games and they end up in the playoffs no matter what. So, I think this is a nice spot for Seattle to go on the road and get a win and keep it rolling. They've been rolling. And so that's J.R.O. Donald from pregame.com taking the Seattle Seahawks right now sitting at plus 2.5. But I like them like you do. I like them even straight up here, JR. And this is a fat winner for the listeners again this week. I'm excited about it, man. I'm going to click the button as soon as we get done here and make sure I get a few dollars down on the Seattle Seahawks. Every week, I try to tell folks out there in podcast land a little bit about what we're hearing on our phone lines, a little bit about what's in our emails and chats. And this week, we've heard from several players who are good players, experienced players that win more than they lose, who are playing at small, tiny places for whatever reason and are now having trouble getting paid. Players who had problems at bigger books, they often look for smaller, newer places to either take a shot at or because they're offering a huge bonus. But the problem's often getting paid. Many of these players will try smaller, new places, and good players think they can beat up on a new book, and they often can, but then they end up getting slow paid or, maybe even called a wise guy and tossed out without getting a nickel stuck back in their pocket. The new places, they're out there offering giant bonuses who attract players who should know better. And they tend to be a bit behind the line moves. And some of the practices that the big dogs like the bookmakers and the bet onlines of the world use, these newer outfits just haven't learned that yet. And so many of these times, these good players are able to beat these places up, and then they have trouble getting paid. The way that I look at it, it's the fault of not just the new place for taking on a player they probably shouldn't have, but also the player's got to bear a little bit of responsibility here for taking a shot that he knows he probably shouldn't have taken. Experienced players who played around with the big dogs, the Heritages, the bookmakers, the U-Wagers, the Bovadas, the bet onlines, and so forth, they can't expect to get the same type of service from a place that opened in the summer. They just can't, and yet they still go and play at these places. The problem is they end up getting in trouble with these places because they're too good. These newer little places, they all want guys who bet $50 on their home team or bet their college alma mater, who send them $100 every week via Western Union and just lose and lose and lose. And they come across a player who's a good player, and they're going to try and screw that guy. And we've seen it time and time again this football season. With these smaller joints, we can often help, but we're not always 100% successful. Sometimes these places simply won't pay or slow pay, and there's not a lot that OSGA or anybody can do to try and help out. So word to the wise, if you're really out there and you're trying to cash tickets and earn a profit and not just play for recreation or on your favorite team, stick with the big dogs, stick with the places that are established, stick with the places that have tens of thousands of customers and are going to be able to pay you when you win. Because when you call me over at OSGA or you hit our guys up on chat and you start saying, I'm playing at Sports Room or CR Sports Bet or Top Bet or any of these small places that are having trouble paying players, you really, really, really have to look in the mirror on this, because you know that if you just played at Bookmaker or Bet Online or Heritage, you wouldn't be calling me right now. So that's our advice this week here at Cast Your Bets, and that's what players should take to heart, especially guys who are trying to cash some tickets. J.R. O'Donnell, we're hoping that you're doing a lot better. I'm sure you're going to load up some plays despite any illness. You've got the papers, you've got the computer, you're probably loading pregame.com up as we speak.
Visit me at pregame.com. Look for J.R. O'Donnell. College Bowl's coming up. I will fire a nice couple bowl winners next week on the podcast. We went a little light on the college football this week, as I certainly apologize to the listeners. But believe me, you can mark it down in ink. I will have 2 fat winners and a lot of college bowl stuff next week. It is the best time of year, and the people can send it home on 2 nice winners. Not opinions, but my top plays, and I'm going to give them here to you guys on the podcast.
JR, I see a lot of stuff from handicappers. They run like a bowl package. Some of these guys, they're picking every game, which is just insane. We talked about it a million times. You can't play every game. Out there on pregame, do you have packages for like your college bowls? And if you do, what are we talking, 10, 12, 15 games?
Yeah, we have college packages. A lot of people buy me weekly or they buy me a month because they're not only going to do the college football, but they do all my sports because I basically am cracking in all sports. But to answer your question, we do have a college bowl package. But I tell people right up front in the moniker and the outline and whatever, I'm going to do maybe a third of the college bowl games. If you need every game, do not go with me. But if you want about 15 of the 40 games, that's what I'm going to give you. Quality over quantity.
Yeah, and that seems like a good rule of thumb. And, I'm a big proponent for not betting every single college bowl game. In fact, it's something that I don't think I've ever done. I don't think I've even ever bet $5 on every game. Just because of the principle of I don't know who these two teams are, and I don't even know then why they're playing in the workman's, craftsman's, tool belt bowl. I just don't understand what the whole thing is all about. Good stuff, JR. Well, hopefully players who are listening, they'll head over to pregame.com and look for you. Folks can always find me at osga.com, and they can always find this podcast out on iTunes, out on blueberry.com, at osga.com, and on YouTube as well. So we hope you're out there listening, taking some of this stuff to heart, taking some notes, heading to your screen after you get done listening to this podcast, and putting a few dollars down on the Seattle Seahawks this week, which is JR's top play. And folks, we hope you cash some tickets, and we'll look forward to seeing you again here at Cast Your Bets.
You've been listening to Cast Your Bets, the Offshore Gaming Association podcast. Check in each week for more inside the sports gaming world. And don't forget to check us out on your favorite social media site and on our YouTube channel at OSGA Sports Betting. Thanks for listening.